Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to welcome all of you to the first event in the AAPC eWorkshop series. My name is Eve Muller. I coordinate program evaluation and outcomes research at Ivy Mount School in Rockville, Maryland, where we serve several hundred students, most of whom are on the autism spectrum. I'll be sharing the webinar today with Lynn Cannon, Ivy Mount's social learning coordinator. Our presentation is titled Teaching the How and the Why of Conversation to Children with Autism Spectrum Disorders. We were both involved in developing and testing the Conversation Club curriculum, which is an AAPC publication that includes all of the activities we'll be sharing with you today. So today we're going to focus on three key objectives. First, we'll talk about why we believe a social cognitive approach is the most meaningful way to provide conversation instruction for students with high-functioning autism. Second, we'll be sharing 8 hands-on instructional activities from the Conversation Club curriculum for teaching the how and the why of conversation to this population, and this will make up the bulk of our presentation. And third, we'll conclude with a brief overview of the student outcomes we've documented in response to participating in Conversation Club. So in 2011, my colleagues began developing and implementing the Conversation Club curriculum, a curriculum designed to teach conversation skills as well as the rationale behind each of these skills. So Conversation Club was developed in response to the fact that our students with high-functioning autism and other social cognition challenges were mostly spending their lunch periods in silence. And in spite of the fact that we were pretty confident that they wanted to be interacting with their peers, they just didn't seem to know how. So this is baseline video of 2 of our students having lunch. I'm gonna play this for you. As you can see, not much is going on here between the 2 boys. So conversation plays a key role in building and maintaining relationships. For most typically developing children, the complex array of skills that's necessary for conversational competence develops automatically and without conscious effort or intervention, from the ability to initiate conversation to the capacity for demonstrating engagement via eye gaze and other nonverbal means, taking turns, negotiating selection of topics, asking and answering questions, monitoring and repairing conversation breakdowns, gauging conversation partners' interest, and adapting our behaviors accordingly. But children with autism spectrum disorders, including those with high-functioning autism, struggle with a range of social cognitive challenges related to joint attention and perspective taking, which means that learning how to engage in spontaneous, unscripted conversation often remains out of reach for them. These children require explicit instruction in conversation, and even then, very few studies have demonstrated any really meaningful long-term gains in this area. So why is this? For one thing, conversation requires second-by-second in vivo analysis of contextual cues and the ability to quickly and flexibly respond to those cues. And unlike social niceties like greetings, introductions, or compliments, conversation really can't be scripted. Good conversation requires the ability to generate novel, context-appropriate remarks that are responsive to the situation as well as to one's conversation partner. This is all part of what we refer to as social cognition, or the mental processes by which we make sense of and navigate our social worlds. And as many of you know, due to brain-based differences, individuals on the autism spectrum experience significant social cognitive deficits. These include difficulties with perspective taking, or what Baron Cohen has described as an impaired theory of mind. Theory of mind helps us attribute mental states to ourselves and to others, and to understand that our own beliefs, desires, and knowledge can be different from others' beliefs, desires, and knowledge. So although research indicates that some children with high-functioning autism can learn to pass basic theory of mind tests, most continue to struggle with inferring peers' intentions, thoughts, and feelings on the basis of their facial, prosodic, and other context clues. And of course, this ability to take someone else's perspective plays a really key role in conversation. Ami Klin also has some interesting things to say about social cognitive deficits as they pertain to autism. He argues that individuals with autism lack a native ability to identify and focus on salient social stimuli, which makes it very difficult for them to respond quickly, flexibly, and appropriately to the ever-changing flow of social information that's produced during natural interactions. So again, precisely the skills that are required for successful conversation are what our kiddos are missing. And finally, it appears that individuals with autism process memories in ways that are qualitatively different from their typically developing peers. These differences make it more of a challenge for them to retrieve detailed information about themselves and others. And again, this type of deficit has a direct impact on conversation, because if memory is bad, then it's hard to come up with things to say. And it's also hard to respond in relative ways to what your partner said during past or present conversations. So after identifying a need for teaching conversation skills to our students, we conducted a review of the literature to see what was currently available for teaching conversation to children with autism and with other social cognitive challenges. And literature related to teaching conversation skills to students with autism, very little of it, which I should add, specifically addresses children with higher functioning autism the way Conversation Club does. Very limited literature tends to take one of three approaches to instruction, each with its own limitations. So first, some take a piecemeal approach, focusing on one or two social skills, such as asking questions or initiating conversation. Skills which represent a part of successful conversation, but not the whole of it. And evidence suggests that while these interventions may improve isolated skills, they don't necessarily result in an increase in spontaneous conversation with peers or the ability to sustain conversations over multiple turns by generating novel on-topic comments and questions. So while this approach may be appropriate for children with more significant cognitive impairments or language deficits, it's not really necessarily a very good fit for more cognitively able children who are often expected to engage in more sophisticated exchanges. Second, some interventions provide conversation skills instruction as part of a broader social skills curriculum, specifically addressing conversation skills during only a few brief lessons. This approach limits opportunities for scaffolded practice conversing with peers, and it doesn't really provide the intensity and duration of instruction that's recommended by experts and seems to be necessary for significant long-term improvements in children with autism and high-functioning autism. And third, quite a few interventions teach conversational scripts as opposed to teaching a set of skills for interpreting and responding flexibly to a range of possible conversation contexts. So this strictly behavioral approach fails to teach the reasons why conversation is important and to nurture perspective-taking skills. And while it might increase engagement in scripted conversations, it doesn't necessarily promote the skills for participating in more naturalistic interactions. And again, we believe this approach to conversation instruction just doesn't set the bar high enough for children with high-functioning autism. So a few intervention models do take a social cognitive approach, however, by including a rationale for social skills acquisition as a core feature of instruction. So for example, the teaching interaction procedure, also known as TIP, provides a pedagogical model for instruction that includes a rationale for why learning a particular social skill is important, as well as a breakdown of the skill into its component parts, modeling of the skill, opportunities to practice the skill with scaffolded support, and a feedback that includes reinforcement. We were also inspired when we made Conversation Club by Michelle Garcia Winner's social thinking approach. And the idea, as some of you may know, behind social thinking is that explicit instruction and direct teaching around both the how and the why of social skills allows for deeper understanding and increased social motivation. So based on our success at Ivy Mount using Madrigal and Winner's Superflex curriculum, we linked each conversation skill we were teaching to a specific comic book type character. And based on our thorough review of existing literature, we did two things. First, we developed more than 40 learning activities that together take a comprehensive approach to conversation instruction. So in other words, we provide intensive, long-term instruction on all the basic interrelated skills that are required to be a competent conversationalist. And second, we made sure that each of these activities included a social cognitive component. This is because we believe it's important to help children with high-functioning autism really understand why conversation matters and to nurture their ability to assess social situations and respond appropriately and flexibly, not just to recite scripts. So as part of Conversation Club, we invite students to become club members. We teach them the constellation of skills required for successful conversation, and we include a cast of really kid-friendly characters who are designed to facilitate thinking, about the social significance underlying each skill. And for each of the 8 units, we include an engaging storybook that introduces students to the target skill being taught. So this slide illustrates the scope and sequence of the first 4 units. Students will first learn what conversation is and why it's important. They'll learn how to select a mutually agreeable conversation topic, how to maintain on-topic conversation over multiple turns, and how to use our eyes and ears to think about our conversation partner. Students will also learn how to repair simple conversation breakdowns, tricks for remembering what our conversation partner says, how to expand the depth and the breadth of conversation, and ultimately how to bring all of these skills together when talking with our conversation partners. I am going to turn the microphone over to Lynn now, who will share some fun and innovative activities that you can use with your students.
Great, thank you, Eve. What you're looking at now are the 8 conversation goal areas that we addressed in our conversation instruction. In some cases, our students may have a strong foundation in a few of these goal areas, or in many cases, we see gaps. However, in order to have successful and meaningful conversation, all of these facets must be present in some capacity. So tonight we're going to delve into each of these goal areas, identify why we care about teaching each particular conversation skill, and then we'll share many hands-on activities for you to use, targeting each goal area addressed. We will also share tips for teaching that you as the instructor should think about in advance to promote greater success. We will begin by focusing on motivation for conversation. As spoken by Dwight Eisenhower, motivation is the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. We recognize that conversation is difficult for children with social cognitive deficits. Many children have had negative experiences associated with conversations, thus making it challenging for them to take risks and enjoy the process of learning. For that reason, it is imperative that as instructors, we must make instruction fun and motivating for these children, or provide opportunities for them to buy into what we're teaching. To start, we help participants understand why it is important to be a good conversationalist. Understanding why conversation is important and fun is at the core of all of our conversation instruction. Opportunities to discuss the why of conversation should be infused throughout each lesson. Why is it important to initiate conversation based on a topic? How do we do that? Why is it important to use your eyes to check in with your conversation partner? It is important because it will make our conversation partner feel good. Then we reflect on how good makes them feel when their conversation partners listen attentively to what they say and want to stay around for more conversation. We have identified 4 key activities or strategies that you can use to support increasing your students' motivation for conversation. These 4 areas are making lessons fun, conversation club stories, teaching the value of conversation, and reinforcement. To further motivate participants, we created the idea of a conversation club, complete with a secret password that members can participate and belong to. Each conversation skill is linked to a specific conversation club character. These include, for example, Friendly Freddy, the club president who helps participants select and maintain a mutually agreed upon conversation topic, Paco the Parrot, the club mascot who encourages participants to share information with each other using his favorite words, those famous WH words, and Good Memory Maria, who helps participants remember what their partner said. Throughout the course of instruction and across all settings, these cartoon club members serve as reminders of specific conversation skills and how to use them. They also provide something concrete to hook concepts to, so that instructors can ask questions like, "What would listening Lisa want you to do?" Or praise participants with phrases like, "Friendly Freddy would be proud of you for choosing a topic that your partner likes." As with Magical and Winner's cartoon characters, the Conversation Club characters are intended to increase motivation and make activities feel more like games than like lessons. Excuse me. I want to take a moment here to highlight our wonderful illustrator, Bobby Whalen. Bobby is a current student at the Ivy Mount School. He has a diagnosis on the autism spectrum, and he worked incredibly hard to create all of the incredible visuals that we see in the Conversation Club curriculum stories. Our Conversation Club curriculum includes Conversation Club stories with each unit. These stories introduce participants to key concepts like what a topic is, how to use WH words, and how to attend to our conversation partners with our whole bodies, as well as how to repair simple conversation breakdowns. Here's an excerpt from the first Conversation Club story, where students are introduced to the meaning of a conversation. You will see that talking and thinking bubbles are included in many of the visuals to further support participants with their perspective-taking challenges. The instructor here would say, conversations are a great way to share neat things about yourself and learn something new about other people. It looks like Looking Louie has just shared that he went swimming. Good Memory Maria just learned something new about Looking Louie. She learned that he likes swimming, just like her. Followed by Friendly Freddy is talking to the other club members about pizza. He's thinking about pizza. It looks like all of his friends are enjoying the conversation. You can tell because they are looking at him, smiling and thinking about pizza too. They are thinking about Friendly Freddy's words and thinking about him. They are all part of this conversation. As part of instruction, each time a new skill was introduced with a character, the students received visual, immediate, and contingent reinforcement. Research shows the benefit of providing external reinforcement to children with autism spectrum disorders to increase the frequency of a targeted skill, establish participation, buy-in, and motivation. As the students gain a deeper understanding of the how and the why behind the social behavior, they receive immediate and contingent reinforcement, and most importantly, experience lots of success. They will ultimately become intrinsically motivated to participate in the conversation with their peers. To teach the participants about the reinforcement system, the instructor would turn to this page in the Conversation Club story and say, not only is having conversations a great way to share and learn information, but club members also earn points for following the rules. Did you know that when the club members earn all of their points, they get to choose something special to do together? When Friendly Freddy earns all of his points, he picks a lunch date with a friend. And sometimes they get to eat lollipops at their lunch date too. What lollipop flavor would you pick? Here's an example of a reinforcement page that the participants may see in the beginning of Curriculum 2. Each child receives visual tally marks so that they can see every time they share space, answer questions, or ask questions. As new conversation goals are targeted, they are added to this reinforcement system. This reinforcement page is from Unit 7. You'll see new additions to the page include gaining attention, checking in with your eyes, and using your memory. Here are a few key tips to consider to foster motivation. Think about pairing children with those they are interested in. They will be more naturally interested in engaging with that partner. If you have two children who have limited ideation, think about limiting that pairing. Pairing a child who has limited ideation with a child who has many ideas will help that child with limited ideation to participate more. Also, we always want to make sure to relate what we are teaching to our students' personal experiences. Excuse me. If we are talking about the topic of movies and one of the participants went to the movies, that is important for them to share and for us to learn. The more personal connections we can help make for our kids, the more meaningful our instruction will be. The next conversation goal area we are going to focus on is environmental awareness and body readiness. Many of our students have limited body and environmental awareness. This includes identifying that there is another person at the table with them, recognizing what space belongs to them, learning how to move their body to face another person, and learning how to be part of a group. We also make environmental modifications as needed. Is it too loud? If so, they'll have a difficult time relating or attending to instruction, sustaining their attention and shifting their attention back to the group. Are there really cool visuals around them that they might be more interested in? If so, let's think about removing those distractors to promote increased attention. Successful conversations require the participants to recognize and acknowledge another person by checking in with their eyes and identifying their partner's intentions, thoughts, and feelings, often based on lots of nonverbal information. If our participants are completely unaware that there's another person next to them, it will be nearly impossible and too far of a stretch for us to expect that they will be able to think about that person. So we first explicitly teach club members to identify who and what is in their space. You can use these simple cards with the keywords who and what. If the club member picks a who card, they have to find a person who's in their space. If they select a what card, they have to move their body to find something based on that key detail. Here are a few things to consider. First, position the children directly across from one another so that they're facing each other. For our students with limited eye contact, this will naturally support them in more independently initiating eye contact. When that student looks up, they're looking directly at their partner, and it removes the instructor from having to prompt them to shift their body, turn their head, or move their eyes. And again, as mentioned already, limit distractions in the room and decrease background noise. If possible, you may even want to go to a separate quiet space. Next up is conversation initiation and topic selection. This cartoon and quote really represents what I often see with students who have language and learning challenges. What to say instead of I don't know. In many cases, the students we work with may not even be able to recognize that they don't know what to say or may not have the language to say it. So the first step is always to take a step back and observe how they initiate conversations on their own. Are they using scripted phrases, gesturing, reciting a lengthy monologue? This is where we begin to directly teach students about what kind of words they will say. E spoke to this area a bit earlier, so I won't spend too much time here. The key things to remember are that children with social cognitive deficits speak at length about highly preferred topics of interest. They may speak about only a few topics, and they use the same vocabulary over and over. We begin by helping the children to think in categories of topics. To do this, we introduce them to the idea of a super brainstorm. The children learn that a topic is what you like to talk about. Then, we try to select topics that are of interest to both the children we are working with. If we are using topics they like and know about, we hope that they have more vocabulary and language around that topic, increasing their confidence, motivation, and hopefully success. It is also really important to pick topics of mutual interest to both children, even though it may be challenging to find one topic that they both like. Once the topic is identified, we focus on expanding their vocabulary around that topic, as well as their thinking around the topics. All ideas are accepted as long as they relate. We want our students to learn that their ideas are important and that they are good ideas. If participants share ideas that seem off topic, we help them to make the connection back to the topic. For example, if the topic is Lion King and one child says something about Simba and another child says popcorn, we may respond with, "Oh, I heard you say popcorn. We eat popcorn at the movies. Lion King is a movie. The Lion King movie made you think about eating popcorn." And then you could record the word popcorn on the web. Here is another quick example of another graphic organizer we use to teach topic selection and conversation initiation based on topics. Some of our participants begin conversation intervention with a larger lexicon, including topic-related vocabulary. However, for most of our students, this is a new concept. Some tips that we have found helpful include bringing in pictures, short videos, or magazines to help the children generate ideas for different topics. Provide them with a shared experience at the beginning of the group so that you know that they've all heard the same vocabulary and experienced the same information related to the topic. Lastly, conducting preference assessments are very beneficial prior to beginning instruction. Children's preferences change frequently, so we recommend finding out their preferences consistently throughout the course of the intervention. The fourth goal area is topic maintenance. At this point, the participants have learned what a topic is and how to initiate conversation based on that topic. Sometimes I think we've all felt like this cartoon. We have time for just one long-winded, self-indulgent question that relates nothing to what we've been talking about. So what do we do? Many of our students focus on details rather than the gestalt or the big picture. This relates to their central coherence and comprehension skill weaknesses. Prior to creating the program, we looked at topic maintenance skills as a domino effect. Excuse me. Once one child picked up on one word that was not related to the main idea, then the next child will pick up on another irrelevant detail, and so on. So it's our job to help club members formulate thoughts that are organized and coherent. If we don't understand them, their peers will not understand them. And if we can't follow their thought process, their peers will not be able to follow it either. To do this, we provide them with a structure for how to formulate questions to ask, as well as to formulate responses when answering questions. This is where we begin teaching them the idea of a key word, or what the sentence is mostly about, the main idea. At this point in the curriculum, when we focus on supporting their ability to maintain a topic for an increasing number of exchanges and to expand on vocabulary related to identified topics, to build a schema and vocabulary related to that topic. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Students are taught to identify the key word in a sentence. So if the topic is soccer, and a child says, I like to play soccer, the key word here is play. When they direct their peers' attention to the WH words, who, what, where, and when, then they ask a follow-up question using that key word. In this sample, the student selected the WH word where and asked, where do you play soccer? The WH word where would be crossed off at the bottom. We include why and how for those students who are able to answer those questions outside of Conversation Club without adult support. This framework is provided as a structure for how to ask on-topic questions and help them identify what they're asking about, as well as what words they will say when asking their question. As you can see on this slide, we make sure to highlight the keywords and keep the text brief. When we first begin topic maintenance units, we may target a back and forth conversation of 4 exchanges. And then the next topic, we may target 6 exchanges, and so on. The kids actively enjoy trying to beat the number of questions they will ask as well, and this in turn is very motivating for them. Here is a series of videos showing what keyword instruction looks like in action.
What does me and Larry want us to do?
He wants you to be a good listener.
A good listener. And what is his trick? Like 37%.
And he has one trick too.
What is it?
He is a good listener.
Right. How to get you to be a good listener? You have to listen for what? The keyword. Nice job, Steve. Keywords, ready? And this chart helps us remember the keywords. So we can use them to ask questions to our friends. What kind of words help us ask questions?
You guys met
Freddie's favorite word. You voted him, or you voted Freddie's favorite word. What's his name?
Friendly Freddy's favorite words? The listening nose. What,
Good. So we're going to use Friendly Freddy's favorite words to help us ask questions about the keywords that Listening Larry helps us
Listen to our friends and listen for something that they say.
What do you guys like to talk about today?
So you can see the teacher using the keyword strategy. And another component of our instruction that is also important is the review that happens at each of the activities as well. So students are constantly circling back to previously learned skills. Some tips for intervention with topic maintenance. It's extremely helpful to cue the listener into what they should be listening for. If they ask a where question, you can simply cue them in to listen for the place. This gives them an active listening job and makes it more concrete. Other tips include using the topics of mutual interest previously identified by bringing out previously created super brainstorm webs or pausing when needed to build a new topic, or a super brainstorm web if you discover the children have limited exposure or vocabulary around the topic that you are focusing on. One of the areas of focus in the Conversation Club curriculum is perspective taking. We help the club members understand that the thoughts of others are important to conversational success. Here's a picture that demonstrates the complex steps that go into understanding perspective. In this nonverbal exchange, we see both nonverbal and verbal signals as well as context that are critically important to understanding what's happening. Perspective taking, or understanding the possible thoughts and feelings of another person, is an area that often does not come naturally for students who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum or who have social cognitive challenges. Being able to understand the perspective of another is a critical component in having a successful conversation, and this lack of understanding can create several areas of conversation failure. Is my conversation partner interested in what I'm talking about? Are they understanding what I'm talking about? Do I have their attention? Do they have a thought that's different about this topic? And is that okay? Is my conversation partner having thoughts and feelings that make them unavailable for conversation right now? And how does what I'm saying make the other person feel? Why do I care about how they're feeling and what they're thinking? Perspective taking is an incredibly complex skill, which may appear to come naturally to neurotypical thinkers and involves many areas, including reading nonverbal cues, such as facial expressions, body language, body space and distance, and eye contact, social rules, and verbal cues. Because this has not come naturally to our population of students, explicit teaching of perspective taking is an important step in creating successful conversationalists. An activity that helps to develop perspective taking skills is the checking in with our eyes game. When we check in with our eyes or use our eyes to look at our partner or make eye contact, we're encouraging students to seek out information about their conversation partner. If the other student is not looking at us, they may not know what we're talking about. So we might have to get their attention. By figuring out what another person is looking at, we are given a clue as to what they might be thinking about. For example, if he's looking at the clock, he might be wondering what time it is. This helps students understand that others can have different thoughts than their own. Making eye contact or checking in with our eyes when having conversation shows that we are thinking about our conversation partner and helps us make sure our conversation partner is paying attention and interested in the conversation. So here's how we play the checking in with our eyes game. First, the group leader should draw a thought bubble on the whiteboard or a piece of paper. The group leader should create a variety of topic cards such as numbers, alphabets, colors, etc. Students then pick a category card and the leader writes that topic in the thought bubble. In this case, the topic is colors. Players use their eyes by looking at their partner to indicate that it's time to switch turns. For example, if the category is colors, the player will set a goal, maybe 10 colors. Player 1 might say red and then look to player 2 to indicate that it's player 2's turn, who might say blue. This game provides the opportunity to explore the feelings and thoughts involved. Mary, when you looked at Joe, he knew that you were ready to talk to him. When we show people we are interested by looking at them, it makes them feel good. Bob wasn't looking at you. He may be thinking about something else. Bob can show that he's ready for conversation by looking at you. Some perspective-taking intervention tips. In that game, we use the thought bubble to illustrate that we are thinking about the same topic. Thought bubbles and speech bubbles are a great tool to use to illustrate different perspectives or that others can have different thoughts. You can easily draw things out in a conversation to show students that they were thinking about the same or different things. Conversation Club files, which are included in the curriculum, list different interests such as TV shows or food and are a great tool for perspective taking. These files can allow students to find topics that are of mutual interest or a topic that they can ask a peer about. By updating the files regularly, students can add new topics to expand conversations. Modeling what we were thinking about and feeling helps the students to see that we might have different perspectives. When you walked away when I asked you a question, that made me feel sad. It told me that you weren't thinking about me, or that what I said wasn't important. Or you looked at me when I called your name. That made me feel happy because I knew you were thinking about me. The next area we're going to touch on is good listening behaviors. Here is a cartoon that we thought was cute, but exemplifies the idea that without good listening behaviors, students may miss important information. Just like our friend here in the comic filters out certain information. The deficits that our students may have may contribute to their tendency to miss out on important information. Teaching good listening behaviors can help them compensate for some of these difficulties and help them identify when they are missing information and how they can find out what are the needed pieces. If we explicitly teach what they should be listening for, the who, the what, the when, and the where, we give them a framework for finding out the important information. As previously stated, because many different processing deficits that our students might have, they might often miss information that is critical to maintaining a conversation. When they miss this information, they don't know where to go next with the conversation. They may be unable to determine follow-up questions or even determine the topic of the conversation. This might lead them to change the topic or disengage from the conversation, all of which leads their conversation partner to have negative feelings about the interaction and to be less likely to engage in future conversations with them. By giving students specific information to focus on, they are better able to be involved in the conversation. They can identify the topic and figure out how to pose follow-up questions. These behaviors increase the back and forth of the conversation. They allow the other person to feel that they are being thought about and that they are important, and they increase the likelihood that others will want to be involved in future conversations with them. The Paco the Parrot activity helps to bring attention to the important details of a conversation. In this activity, Paco the Parrot helps club members use his favorite words to create complete and descriptive comments. Complete and descriptive statements include information answering each of the WH words. Club members focus on generating descriptive statements that other club members will find interesting. As club members listen to the descriptive statements, they will use a Paco the Parrot graphic organizer or puzzle to focus on what information they know, what information is missing. And as you can see here, each part of Paco's body represents one of the WH words. We have a video of some students using Paco the Parrot. This session was taking place in the classroom during lunchtime. The teacher reminds the students about why conversations are important, helping to encourage intrinsic value. She then helps create some fun by talking about how the students will trick each other and need to use their good listening behaviors and follow-up questions to find out the missing information. What is difficult to see is the puzzle. The teacher is placing the puzzle pieces on the table as the students tell the story. The missing WH puzzle piece is the cue for the student to ask a follow-up question. Notice that the teacher provides praise when the students are able to ask about the missing information.
Right. So
Why do we want to have conversations?
Friendly Friday.
With our friends.
What he helps us to do.
We need to give friends good thoughts.
Yeah, we want to give our friends good thoughts and conversations are fun. We can share stories. And we can find out things about our friends, right?
Talk to our friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So remember we've been using Polly's puzzle. And you've been trying to guess what I forgot to tell you.
Who's gonna go first?
Remember? But today, I want you guys to try and trick each other.
We're eating and talking at work.
You're going to tell David a story, but you're not going to give him all the information. Okay? You're going to leave a part of Polly out.
I'm just gonna watch it.
If Michael forgets to tell you who we're talking about, what do you need to do? You need to?
You need to get your pencil and get the paper
Right?
Thank you.
So David's going to share a story with you, but he's not going to tell you all the information. He's going to try to trick you, okay? He's It's going to leave something out. So you have to ask questions to find out more information.
Yeah.
So you need to be a good listener, okay?
Yeah.
Play the game. Play the game.
And we want to keep on.
More pizza. When did you play games?
Patrick, you will not eat it until your paper is done. Get busy. Thank you.
Today.
The information that David gave you to ask a when question. Nice job listening to David's story.
So you can see that Paco the Parrot is a great way of extending conversation, and that the teacher did a masterful job of using her praise to highlight those skills that the students were using. So some intervention tips for good listening behaviors. Make sure to use explicit language to prime the club members for what they are listening for. Make sure to explicitly state what body part they should be listening with, and give those club members a listening job. Next, we're going to turn our focus to behaviors which increase the student's ability to gain the attention of their conversational partner. The students we work with may not have the skills to effectively gain the attention of their conversation partner. How many times have you seen a student yell across the room to someone else, or start talking to someone who's busy doing something else? Making sure that a student has the attention of their partner is a critical step to the success of the conversation. Our students may not have the skills necessary to read the situation. They often have special interests and may have a lot of information about one particular topic and not others. That special interest may or may not be interesting to their peers. Understanding that their partner is or is not interested can make or break the success of the conversation. Additionally, if they're unable to recognize that their partner is not ready to talk, maybe they're talking to somebody else, or they're not in the same space, or they're looking another direction, the success of the conversation can be greatly impacted. There are two variations to the squishy ball game. The first version of this game gives the players the opportunity to make sure that they have the other player's attention before passing them the ball. The second version of the game allows for one player to use the ball to pretend that he or she is distracted, and that the other player has the opportunity to use one of their attention-gaining strategies that they've already learned before asking the question. In order to play this game, the leader would provide players with a foam or squishy ball as they sit around a table, and would create a list of questions or question cards. Examples of questions would be, what do you like to do after school? What's your favorite food? The group should practice the first version until they seem to be passing the ball smoothly, and then the group can move on to the second version. Other ways to emphasize gaining attention are teach behaviors such as tapping on the shoulder. You can involve the student in the role play in which one has to walk up to another and tap them on the shoulder to get their attention. You can teach attention-gaining phrases like, excuse me, or can I tell you something? Leaders can also model these behaviors by role-playing, speaking to someone with or without gaining their attention, and can have the students give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to indicate if attention was gained. It is important to catch the students engaging in this behavior. I like how you said my name and waited until I turned around before you started talking. Our next area is conversation repair, or identifying when someone or something has gone wrong in the conversation. When something goes wrong in conversations, or our students have an unsuccessful conversational experience, it can lead to frustration for both partners. It can also impact the chance that the partner will want to engage with that student again. For example, if all I do is talk about SpongeBob without letting you enter the conversation, or if I fail to notice that you are bored, this might make it less likely that you and I would want to engage in future conversations. It can be a frustrating experience for us both. This area is focused on helping members identify when communication breakdowns occur, to understand what caused breakdowns, and to explore ways to repair the conversation. Children with social learning deficits often do not use or understand nonverbal communication skills to reference their conversation partners, check in to see if their conversation partners are listening, or assess if their conversation partners are interested in the conversation. And even if they are verbally involved in the conversation, they may not be aware that their conversation partner is not listening or that a breakdown has occurred. As a result, the conversation may start and stop frequently or appear very one-sided. By teaching club members what a conversation breakdown looks like, building their awareness of specific behaviors that cause a conversation breakdown, and teaching them tools to repair the breakdown, they will be more likely to fix problems on their own as they occur. Breakdown in conversation can occur for a variety of reasons. It could be that one partner is not looking at the other, as we talked about during the previous activity. One partner might be talking too quickly, too quietly. Students may be missing information, or one partner might not be interested in the topic. Our next activity helps students to identify if their partner is interested in the topic. This activity will focus on teaching club members to identify when their partner is not interested in what they're talking about. They will also use a strategy to solve these types of problems. The purpose of this activity is to teach club members to assess their partner's nonverbal cues, such as where the other partner is looking and examining their facial expressions. Are they smiling, or are they frowning? Do they look confused or bored? To determine if they're interested. If they are not interested, they should select a tool to use. These tools include asking the partner if they want to keep talking about that topic, asking what they would like to talk about, or selecting a new topic. For this game, topic cards are once again used. This time, half the topic cards are topics of interest based on their conversation club files. The other half of the topic cards contain boring topics or topics the instructor knows are non-preferred. The club member will take turns selecting a topic and will engage in spontaneous conversation. When they hear a predetermined sound selected at the beginning of the group, they must do the interested or not check-in. During this check-in, they will use a visual aid to assess if their conversation partners are interested. If so, they will continue discussing that same topic. If they're unsure, they will ask their partners if they'd like the topic or not. If the partners are uninterested, club members will change the topic by selecting a new card. This is a great activity that's easy to reproduce. You can use a whiteboard or draw simple smiley faces with eyes looking forward for interested, or a frowny face with eyes looking away for not interested. This is another activity in which the conversation club files come in handy in developing your topics. However, you can easily make up a quick list of topics based on what you know about your students and what they like and what they don't. You can help facilitate conversation repair when students are engaged in conversation by emphasizing keywords. Ben said that he went to the store after school. By stressing the most important information, we can help the students stay on topic. I heard Mary say that her favorite food was ice cream. We can model speaking slowly and clearly. It is important that our instructions are broken down into small steps and make sure that our students are understanding the concepts and that they have the opportunities for practice. When you see your students engaging in positive social behaviors that facilitate conversation, point it out to them. I noticed that you said Jill's name and you waited until she looked at you before you told her about the movie. Great job getting her attention. And at this point, I'm going to turn the slides back over to Eve, and she's going to tell you about the pilot study that we have conducted to test the efficacy of this intervention.
Student skills were improving. So in order to do this, we tracked progress for 7 students aged 7 to 9. All were language tested to ensure that they had adequate receptive and expressive language skills to benefit from the program. In terms of data collection, we gathered baseline data for each of the 7 students by videotaping them during lunchtime, sitting with one peer. And at the end of the year, we again videotaped the same 7 students during lunchtime to see how well skills learned during conversation club lessons had generalized. So in terms of research questions, we wanted to know if there was improvement over time in students' conversation skills. In order to measure this, we transcribed both baseline and end-of-year video footage and counted the numbers of times that students demonstrated desired conversation skills. So as you saw, prior to Conversation Club, lunchtime for all 7 participants was pretty much spent in silence. with the exception of the occasional requesting teachers for help or repetition of TV and video game scripts. There was virtually no meaningful interactions with peers. So this video is a sample of post-intervention interactions between the same two participants that you saw at the beginning of this.
What are you gonna do today?
Ask a teacher.
I'm gonna go to the reference fair. Where are you gonna go with? My mom. Where is it at?
Minus 3.
It's right behind the daycare named Bright Eyes.
You can ask the right one. Can you please help me?
It's right behind Bright Eyes.
Sure. Here we go.
Here, I'll.
And these are all tricky ones. I don't like those tricky ones.
Sit down and start with
Crackers?
yes.
The healthy food.
I'm gonna go to my grandma's.
As you can see, the video footage shows that participants adopted many of the skills we taught them during Conversation Club, and our formal analysis of video footage confirmed this. So for example, this table shows an increase in students' peer-directed interactions. And without a doubt, this was the most significant area of growth for students. The leftmost green bars indicate baseline. Students were directing almost no comments or questions to peers at baseline, an average of 7 comments per 20-minute lunch period, so next to nothing. But by the end of the year, the number of peer-directed interactions had increased dramatically. As you can see from the dark blue bars, students were able to sustain high levels of peer-directed conversation with an average of 69 comments or questions directed to peers, even in the absence of a reinforcement system, since this was just spontaneous talk at the table. We were really thrilled by this finding, although more rigorous research is still needed to determine if outcomes generalize over longer periods of time. Positive trends were also observed for the number of questions that students asked, their use of WH words, and their attempts at simple conversation repair. So in terms of qualitative outcomes, based on interviews with key instructional staff, the following changes were also observed. Pairs of students who originally maintained on-topic conversation for no more than 3 turns were now sustaining conversation on the same topic for up to 40 turns per topic. This really blew our mind. It was a huge improvement. Students were more able to use strategies like checking in with their eyes to secure their partner's attention. Students began to use simple conversation repair strategies like saying, "What did you say?" if they didn't understand something their partner said, or repeating questions if their partner failed to respond the first time. Ivy Mount staff observed students using WH questions spontaneously as a strategy for sustaining conversation on a topic. We were really excited about this. Students were more likely to modify their conversation according to what they knew about their partner's interests. So for example, choosing topics of mutual interest like video games or football. Students were more likely to engage in spontaneous interactions with their peers as opposed to waiting to be prompted. This was also really exciting. And finally, Ivy Mount staff felt that students were engaging in more purposeful interactions with peers. In other words, they were more likely to be sharing novel content about their lives, asking relevant and appropriate questions about their peers, as opposed to just engaging in scripts and repeating things that by heart and by rote. So in addition to the 8 activities that Lynn shared with you, there are a few key points we hope that you take with you today. First, it's important to pull instructors out of the role of leading all conversations. So de-emphasizing your own roles and encouraging students to focus on each other is really critical for their learning to converse with their peers. Make conversation fun. For us, this meant creating cartoon characters tied to each skill, lots of fun games and activities so that students looked forward to Conversation Club. The club theme is also a big hit, and every group of Conversation Club members really loves selecting and using their super secret password. It's also important to find ways of ensuring that conversations are motivating both intrinsically and extrinsically. For us, this meant teaching students that conversation makes us feel good and makes our partners feel good, but it also meant using a point system to encourage desired conversation behaviors, especially at first when conversing with peers really hasn't yet become a reward in itself. And finally, we can't overstate the importance of infusing language throughout the day that reinforces students' use of conversation skills, such as the language that Lynn shared with you earlier in this presentation. So in conclusion, I just want to reiterate that Conversation Club curriculum offers a unique social cognitive approach to teaching conversation skills to students with high-functioning autism and other social cognition challenges. And we're especially excited by the fact that preliminary data support the notion that Conversation Club is a really effective means of doing this. So also after several years of trialing the Conversation Club curriculum with Ivy Mount students, presenting it at various conferences around the country to thousands of people at this point, and recently publishing outcomes in a number of peer-reviewed journals, we're delighted that the curriculum is now available through AAPC. So if you liked the 8 activities that Lynn shared with you, please buy the book. And I believe that AAPC will be sending out a discount coupon that can be used to purchase the curriculum within the next 30 days. I'm also putting up our email addresses to here so that Lynn and I are always glad to field questions. We love to hear about how you're using the curriculum with your students, what works, or how you've modified the curriculum for diverse learners. And finally, I want to remind you to stay tuned for information from AAPC about upcoming eWorkshop series events. And I guess at this point we can open up for questions.